Hello, Granny Basketball referees. I'm excited that we are having the 2025 Iowa Senior Games this weekend in Des Moines, but I was stressed out about the fact that we aren't having a banquet and I may not have an opportunity to meet with you before play starts. And then I thought, wow, maybe I can do this on Zoom. So I'm doing a Zoom video and hope to be able to share it with you. Um, I have a few things that I would like to talk to you at this time. I would ask that you look over the 2025 Granny basketball rules before you come down to Des Moines. And that you would also take a look at the Granny basketball handbook. That's, if you don't have it, it's on the Granny basketball website. And it talks about a lot of things that will help you as a referee in your positioning. I think there's a lot of people that may not be aware that that book exists. I know I didn't for quite some time. It'd be great if you could bring a copy of the rule book with you in case you have any questions or need to use it for reference. You play a super important role in keeping our players safe and having fun this weekend. It's our responsibility as referees to keep control of the game. And you can do that by establishing a pace and your expectations of no physical contact immediately when the game starts. Remind the teams that you're going to be calling it closely. Give them any other reminders that you think might help them to keep the pace slower and the physical contact out of the game. And also remind them that team captains are the only ones that can address a referee if they have a question. I think we need to reestablish that decorum between referees and players, okay? The biggest thing that I can emphasize for us to do a good job is to keep things slowed down. Sometimes when things get going too fast, our brain doesn't do a very good job of keeping up with it. As we get older, it doesn't work as fast. And if you can keep the pace of the game slowed down, it'll make your job so much easier. If you think somebody is running, they probably are. Toot that whistle and toot it really loud. Be assertive. When you are an example of, I'm confident, I'm assertive, this is my call, you're going to have a lot less people question your call. We all make mistakes. Not everybody's perfect. Just try to do the best job you can. Be fair with the calls on both sides. That's all we can ask. You're going to miss a call now and then. You might not get it right, but learn from it and move on. I think I can tell you that it helps if you get yourself in a position to see the plays that are going on. And by hustling down, if you're a down official, if you get down below the basket, all the way below the basket, and kind of float that baseline, you'll have the best view of what's going on under the basket. Stand back away from the out of bounds lines. It makes it easier for you to see what's going on. Sometimes when you're too close, you can't see the big picture. And we all know it's much easier to referee from the stands than it is courtside. And I think a lot of times that's very true. And that's because from the stands, you can see the big picture. And it's a lot easier to pick things out than when you're right on top of it. So get in a good position. And that may mean doing something that we aren't allowed to do as a player. And that means run down the court and get in position. I always feel like it's more work to officiate than it is to play because we have to run the court to keep up with the ball. When there's a timeout or a quarter break, get together with your other two officials and discuss anything that you might think is an issue. If you think, oh, I think maybe somebody is doing this or that, but I'm not quite sure enough to blow my whistle, talk to the other referees and see if they're saying the same thing. Work together to call the most fair and by the rules game that you can. A few things, reminders for the rules. Remember, there is no stealing from behind or at the side of the player with the ball. That ball has to be all the way out of their hand before a steal attempt can be made, and the person making the steal attempt needs to be in front of them, not from behind, not from the side, reaching in. Also, remember each player is entitled to the cylinder above their head, all the way up to the ceiling. So if you got a short person and there's a tall person towering over them, okay, that's a foul, and you need to call that. I want you to be really cognizant and aware to protect our center players. Remember that they are guaranteed a space to pivot and guaranteed a space directly in front of them when they're standing up to the line to receive a ball from another court. If they step away from the line, then that rule is no longer in play. But if they're standing up to the line, they get that space in front of them. No one is allowed to reach in front to try to knock the ball away from them. Okay. Another thing I'd like to have you focus in on is impeding with the arms. Impeding is when somebody uses their arms to prevent somebody from moving. Now, yes, a defensive player can have their arms out, but they aren't allowed to prevent somebody from moving by holding them with their arms. And most of the time in basketball, that's a holding foul. We call it impeding. All right. So those arms have to drop away or not hinder another player's movement. And if they don't drop, then that's a foul. We have a lot of really good, talented post players this year. And I've noticed quite a number of them, because this is ingrained in their head, they'll get close to their position that they want to establish, and then they'll start making contact with that defensive player, trying to, some people will say it, they're backing them down. I think they're taught, feel your defensive player, and then you know where you can move, where you can make your move. However, in granny basketball, there's no contact. So please watch those post players and make sure that they aren't the ones initiating the contact on their guard. If the guard has their position established and they're still, and that post forward backs into them, you've got to call the foul, okay? Contact is not always a defensive foul. Please try to determine who has initiated the contact. Try to do your best all weekend. Try to be fair. That's all we can ask. If you have questions about an interpretation of a rule or anything else, you can certainly try to find me, or there's a number of representatives from the board of directors that'll be there, and they can also answer your questions. Georgia Jones from the Fireflies will be there. Teresa Miller and Jean Carter are from down south. They're both on the board of directors. So if you see somebody that's unfamiliar to Iowa, it's probably a board of director person, and they certainly can answer your questions. Sunday is a nightmare for me to schedule because we don't know who's going to win, who's going to lose, who's going to be available for refereeing and scorekeeping. So generally the scorekeeping team will be assigned, as is a refereeing team. But a lot of times on that bracket, there's also a little blurb that says referees or as assigned, because I'm going to do my best to try to put the best referees available for each game on Sunday. So that may mean that your team's going to score, and a conglomeration of referees from other teams may be doing the refereeing. Now, the early games, that's not always possible, but as we get later in the day, we're gonna do a conglomeration of referees to try to get the best team possible. I really am grateful for the teams that the past couple years have stuck around long after they're done playing, just to be there in case we need help. And that's made my job the last few years so much easier. Please, when you get done, just swing by me or Joyce Harris and say, is there anything you need me for? Please don't just finish your game and go racing out of there. Because there's been years in the past that we were struggling to find refs for the last couple games. So please, please, please help this to be an enjoyable weekend for everybody by trying to pitch in. I think we're gonna have a great tournament. It's kind of a first in a long time. We have all Iowa teams in the tournament. And we're back at West Des Moines. Hopefully the air conditioning will work. I am hoping that everyone will be safe and have a great time, and you're a big part of that. Thank you for all you do. I know refereeing is a tough job. See you in Des Moines.